When you're being awake, and I say it that way, you're being awake, right? Because awakeness is already true. So it's not, it's, we talk about waking up. We only talk about that as a concession because from the viewpoint of a personality, it would seem to be waking up, right? But it's actually not waking up because you're already awake, but you're not being awake, you're being asleep. Right? So you're living in the dream. You're living in a dream state. Right? You're not being awake. So then what's it take to be awake? And when you are being awake, what that means is that you have become aware of awareness, and awareness is not a thing. Awareness has no form, right? Becoming awake means you become awake of something that's already true, already the case, that awareness is already here. The baby was awake and aware before it got language, and when it got language, it identified itself as something that doesn't exist, called a person. But it's living in a world of persons, and so by agreement it looked like it must be true because everybody else is one, everybody else is a physical body and a person, so the baby has no ability to question anything, right? It's completely innocent, right? And it's subject to accept everything that it's told because it has no alternative to that. A baby can't listen to what the parents are teaching it and say, oh, I'll take that under consideration. No, they take it on 100%. My parents tell me my name, I take that name. My parents tell me that's your body, I take that to be my body. My parents start to tell me more and more about me, and I start adding that to what they tell me, and then I start contributing to the construction myself out of the thoughts that I have through living my life, right? There now becomes this character that I'm being, and I know enough about it to know what it likes and what it doesn't like and what it wants and what it doesn't want. And so I start seeing the world through those glasses of that character that I'm being. And all the other possibilities for being, all the other possibilities for seeing are no longer there. I am now in this very limited way of existing called the personality in the physical body. And that way of existing has been constructed through language. And that language becomes a process that goes on in my mind called thinking. And so now the world I'm living in is a thought world. I am no longer in the real world, I'm in a thought world. Nothing's changed. That's the thing that you have to see. Everything has always been the same as it always was. The only thing that's different, right, is now I am allowing myself to see the whole thing instead of living in a very limited form called the person. In order to do that, I have to recognize what's missing from the personality. What's missing from the form of the personality is this, one way of saying it is the space in which the personality is occurring in. Or another way of saying it is the awareness that has no form, that is now in the form of a personality, like that. So that's missing from the personality. And so the personality sees itself to be separate and limited from life, from people, from the world, even from itself. Separate and limited from itself in terms of the thought activity that occurs, will even have considerations and judgments and evaluations about itself. So it's even separate from itself, right? This causes confusion, this causes suffering, this causes a lot of behaviors to survive as this little, limited, separate self called the personality that is not part of the world. It's separate from the world, it's separate from life, it's separate from other people. So that sets up the operation, and the operation is to survive. Because if it's just little me and there's a billion people, and if it's just little me and there's the whole universe, and if it's just little me, then I have to be careful. This is a dangerous situation. Anything can happen here. Anything can happen here. I've heard about it. I watch the news. I've heard about it. People can be crazy. Life can be unpredictable. Better be careful. My whole life is now being orchestrated with that basic function, survival. We hear it in language when people talk about, how am I going to get through this? That's survival talk, right? Getting through the day, getting through the week, looking forward to some other time because this time isn't sufficient. This is not satisfying enough. So we're living in an in-between life, aren't we? We're living in an in-between life. What's going on here is always being compared to what happened there and what might happen there. And it always fails, right? It always fails. Every once in a blue moon, what's happened here is better than what happened there and what happened there, right? And then when that happens, then we put it over here and we start using that to compare what else is happening now. You see the process? It's a process of dissatisfaction. And it's a process of dissatisfaction because in the form we're in, it's impossible to be satisfied. How can I be satisfied if I'm separate from everything, right? How can I be satisfied if I am a very limited aspect of what there is? And so now I want to be happy. You know, one of my friends sent me an email about the word happiness. And I thought it was very interesting to take under consideration because we believe happiness is a real thing, don't we? Don't we consider happiness to be something real that we can aspire to? Something real that we can pursue, right? What does it mean to pursue happiness? Look in your own life. What does your pursuit of happiness look like? What have you been doing in order to be happy? What's the pursuit look like? What's your behavior been in terms of the pursuit of happiness? Look and see for yourself. Happiness is not here, so it must be somewhere. It must be a possible experience that I could have. And what does it look like? What would it look like? If you look in your own life, when were you happy? When were what you call happy? So that's interesting. Brian said, I was happy when I was a child, right? Well, that's true. You were happier when you were a child, but even when you were a child, you were pursuing happiness. It may have not been full-blown yet, right? It may have not turned into a career, right? But you were still pursuing it, weren't you? When you were a child, what did you look forward to when you were in school? Getting home, right? So happiness is something that you're going to get, right? You don't have it, you're going to get it, right? And when you get what you think it is and you have what you think it is, then you're happy, no matter what it is, right? It could be getting home from school. It could be getting a certain amount of money. It could be getting a relationship, right? It could be anything that you want that you don't have.
Married and raising children.
Yeah, whatever it is, getting married and raising children, whatever it is. Whatever it is that you have gotten through your conditioning, right, to believe, because this all gets handed down, right? Whatever it is that you got through your conditioning to believe happiness is what you're going to chase. That's what you're going to chase. Right? But do you ever really stop and look and see exactly what's going on here? Do you ever stop, slow down and look and see that every time, because what you'll see if you look is that happiness is something you don't have, something that you're going to get. And when I get whatever that is, that I believe it's going to make me happy, then I'll be happy, right? Well, we've all experienced that, but when you got whatever it is that was going to make you happy, what happened? Because when you got what you thought would make you happy, it's like eating food and satisfying your appetite, right? How long does that last, right? It never lasts. You get hungry again, right? So when you get what you want, no matter what it is, there's an experience called gratification, and we call that happiness. I'm gratified, right? Because I now have what I wanted. But now I have a problem. Because if I now have what I want, right, and the experience of having what I want starts to lose its effect of feeling gratified, just like after I eat, I get hungry again, happens the same way. It starts to gradually lose its effect. I don't care what it is, a relationship, a new house, a new car, a new trip, you put in whatever you want, right? Whatever you ever got that you thought made you happy, it never ever lasts, right? Because when you start to experience having it, it loses the appeal it had when you didn't have it, doesn't it? Yeah. You know, when I met my wife, I thought, oh, wow, you know, it'd really be cool to have her. You know, she's beautiful, she's educated, she's talented, she's got a lot of earning potential, just what I'm after, right? But after I started living with her, I said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. This is why I didn't sign up for this. Yeah, well, yeah, if you put all your happiness into the fact that somebody else is making you happy, then you have to be careful because, you know, they might die, they might get sick, they might get crazy, they might get human, you know, and then they won't be providing that happiness anymore. When you fall in love, you put the glasses of romantic love on, right? And then you can see the person that you're with is, no matter what they do, it's cute. You love them. They're just wonderful. You're so excited to share life with them. And then soon as you're with them for a while and you're guaranteed that they're going to be with you, that's called marriage. As soon as you're with them for a while and you're guaranteed they're going to be with you, then the glasses come off now because the romantic love isn't happening anymore. And once the glasses come off, you say, what the hell was I thinking? That happens, by the way, all the time. There's no other way for it to happen because romantic love is a pair of glasses that don't stay on, right? Once you get what you want, the appeal of having what you don't want isn't there anymore. If you get a new car, it isn't long when the new models come out. When you stop at the red light, you're looking over. That car is a little different than this one. That's a newer car. That's a newer car. Now people can tell that my car is old, and it doesn't feel at all the way it did when I first got it. Maybe in order to get that feeling back, I have to get that car, right? So this is the treadmill. This is the gerbil wheel, right? This is the rat race, right? And once you get stuck in that rat race, it can be a never-ending process. And if you don't stop and take a look, you can live out your entire life until you die, and die in the pursuit of happiness. Maybe your pursuit of happiness will continue on into the next life, right? Or your pursuit of happiness. I'm not happy in this life, but I have faith in God and I have faith I'm a good person, I'm going to go to heaven, and that's where I'm going to be happy. People take vows when they get married, right? I was talking to one of my clients about this today. People take vows when they get married. So what gets in the way of loving somebody until death do you part? What gets in the way of loving somebody and having that love stay alive no matter what conditions exist? Well, expectations when instead of the marriage forming a relationship that's different than each separate life, both people continue to live separate lives. And then you have expectations of the other person, right? If the relationship is fulfilled, the possibility of the relationship is fulfilled, now there's two separate lives that merge and people are participating in a marriage or relationship that is not either separate life, but is both lives coming together in a way that's fulfilling, that's founded on love. Most marriages are two separate people trying to get along, isn't it? Most marriages are two separate people trying to get along. It's just like humanity is 8 billion separate people trying to get along. How's that going? That ain't going, right? So what the teachings tell us and what the practices make available to us is that it's possible through being still and being silent and practicing, spending time each day sitting that way and letting go of this conditioning, you know, just for a few minutes, you know, letting go of this conditioning and allowing what's there to show up. When the conditioning is not running, what's there? You could say nothing, right? You could say nothing. You could say without thinking what's there, you could say nothing. But here's something that people get confused about. They think nothing is nothing. That's one of the reasons that people resist it. I don't want to be nothing. What, are you kidding me? Because they think nothing is nothing. But they don't understand. The definition of the nothing that I'm pointing to is not a vacuum. It's not the absence of anything. It's everything, but not separate things. When I say nothing, I mean it's no specific thing, it's everything. That's what I mean when I say nothing, right? So it's not the absence of things, it's the fullness of everything, but no longer relating to it or seeing it as a bunch of individual separate things. No thing. It's not a thing. When you move your attention away from the thought activity that is producing things, you're a thing, they're a thing, life's a thing. It's producing things all the time. It's seeing everything as separate, right? When you move your attention away from that and you experience what's there without the thought activity, you can't speak it. It's not a thing, but it is real. It is not the absence of anything. You can't speak it. It is real. It's realer than all this shit, right? Without that, all this couldn't even exist, right? Because it is existence itself. It's what exists itself that can exist separate from this if you go in a cave long enough until this dies out, right? And then you're just experiencing this all the time, but you can't talk to anybody. You can't go back and interact with other human beings, right? So you're going to have to get back involved with this again if you're going to come out of the cave, right? But here's the deal, right? And a lot of people that went into caves didn't complete the process because they succeeded in experiencing the non-conceptual experience, right? Being that which you can't speak, right? And they experienced that, and they experienced that was like that was a pretty wild experience, you know, to experience this no thing that is everything, right? It's a pretty wild experience. But there's no relating involved in that because everything is the same. In order for a relationship, we got to get back to this other thing where everything is separate, right? So how does this work? If you realize the truth, which is that the non-conceptual reality is the essence or the fundamental nature of your existence, right? And then you come to take the next step, you come to complete the process, complete the circle, right? And realize that this personality that is produced in thought form, right, is this having taken form. It is this having taken form, right? So now, is there any difference between the two? No. When you realize experientially that which completes this, right, so that they're now the same, they're now equal, like an equation, right? Then in the middle is what? You could say balance, right? You could say zero, right? Huh? So what happens, though, is very interesting, right? And this is one of the problems that a lot of people experience with this process. They think, oh, the solution to being limited as this is to become this, right? That's what a lot of people think. I'm the personality, but I want to become the awareness, right? The only problem is if you become this, now it's lopsided on this side, and there's nothing over here, right? So that doesn't work. You have to live in a cave, right? So the only thing that's going to work now is to, when you experience that this is your essential nature, to allow yourself to take the next step, which is to understand this essential nature, which is no thing, yeah, manifested as a thing so it could experience a human life. Right? So it manifested as a thing so it could experience human life. And when that is seen, and when the experience is complete, when you have the form and the emptiness, right, being experienced as one thing, which is non-dual, right? The form and the emptiness being experienced as one thing, which is non-dual, right? Then something new appears. That's not the awareness or the form, right? Something new appears. And that which appears that's new is called being. Now I am being. Am I a form? No. Am I awareness? No. I'm both at the same time. That's the balance. And when you are experiencing being in that balanced state as the form and the awareness at the same time, right? You're fulfilled. You're complete, right? And what exists then is not what we call happiness. What exists then is the absence of suffering, the absence of problems, the absence of limitations, right? The absence of all that, and that's called peace, isn't it? Yeah. So what we called happiness is really peace, right? If I could snap my fingers and your personality would disappear and your personal history would disappear, but you would still be here, able to experience able to experience life, able to experience your existence, right? You would still be here, right? Wouldn't you call that peacefulness? Nothing's happening. If nothing's happening, wouldn't that be peace? And when you don't think about something, nothing's happening. Now that nothing that's happening is not nothing. The nothing that's happening is everything but being experienced all at once. Okay? So it's not a vacuum, it's the fulfillment. You become the space that the form is in, and the form and the space are the same. When you walk into this room, what do you see? You see the room, right? You don't see the space, right? Without the space, could the room be here? Without the room, could the space be here? You see? And the reason that that's the case is because the space and the room are the same thing. One is the appearance of the room, and the other one makes the appearance possible, right? The awareness has the potential of form, and the form is the potential realized as a form. But they're not separate. They're one thing happening, and when you experience that one thing happen, it's called non-duality. And when you experience that one thing happening, you experience freedom. Freedom, which means you no longer are stuck with a fixed way of being, called a personality. Now you're free to be anyway. Now you're free to be anyway. And how do you determine how to be? By being present and seeing what's happening and relate to that in the way that you see would work to produce the results you want. Otherwise, you're stuck with a fixed point of view, and whatever doesn't fit this, you can't do it. If your relationship requires love and you're not experiencing love, right, yeah, because the love experience is the experience that's available when you experience your true nature as nothing, which is everything, which is love, right? How can you not love everything when you are everything? That's what love is. How can you not love everything when you are everything? And if in your relationships you begin to have difficulties, it's because you're no longer experiencing love, you're experiencing a concept called love, right? And you think that means X, Y, and Z, so you make sure that you try and figure out what the other person is going to need you to do so they know you love them. But love isn't something you do. When love as a context, right? When love as a context, that everything that's happening is happening in the context of love, right? That's a whole different story. Right? That's a whole different experience. So it turns out that there is no real happiness. What there is peace. And the peace that is available is the peace that passeth understanding. Have you heard that before? The peace that passes understanding, right? Which means that you experience a sense of peace, you experience a sense of well-being that's very peaceful and satisfying, right? But you can't figure it out. You don't know why that's the case. You didn't do anything to be peaceful, right? That's what the peace that passes understanding means. It's not reasonable, right? If you start experiencing the truth, you start experiencing spontaneous happiness and spontaneous peace. It just happens. Right, because you're now experiencing the truth. You're experiencing that which is real, that which doesn't change, right? That which is your essential being that couldn't exist until you got balance between the form and the emptiness. And when that balance was experienced, then something new showed up called non-dual experience or experience of being. Gratification is real in terms of the nervous system experiences a relaxing when it, you know what I mean? There's tension when you're trying to get what you don't have, and when you get it, the system kind of relaxes, right? It calms down, it gets peaceful, right? But then there's this thing that starts to play again, like, it was much more exciting when I didn't have what I want because then I was looking forward to it. What's that?
You always want what you can't have.
That's right. And there's no end to what you can't have, so you'll spend the rest of your life trying to get it.